Hello, and welcome to another edition of NewsCurrents. I am your host, Gary Aubrey. Coming up, Campaign 2020, the Electoral College, devastating wildfires in western U.S., and Chicago changes park name to honor Frederick Douglass. But first, who am I? I am a professional tennis player. Although I grew up mostly in the United States, I represent Japan, where I was born 22 years ago. My father was born in Haiti, and my mother comes from Japan. My family moved to the U.S. when I was 3 years old. My father, inspired by the example of Venus and Serena Williams, started teaching me tennis when I was young. I turned professional before my 16th birthday. In 2018, I won my first Grand Slam singles title by defeating Serena Williams at the 2018 U.S. Open. On September 12th, I won my second U.S. Open singles title. For each of the 7 matches I played, I wore a different mask featuring the name of a black person allegedly killed by police or racist violence. I said the point of doing this is, quote, to make people start talking, unquote. Who am I? Naomi Osaka. And now it's time for news names, news places, and news words. Cyril Ramaphosa, current president of South Africa. Electoral College, body of people who cast presidential votes for their states. Frederick Douglass, abolitionist, orator, and activist, lived from 1818 to 1895. Gavin Newsom, current governor of California. Nelson Mandela, civil rights activist, first democratically elected president of South Africa. He lived from 1918 to 2013. Vasco Núñez de Balboa, Spanish explorer, lived from 1495 to 1519. And news places, we have California, China, Illinois, Oregon, Panama, and South Africa. And news words, we have apartheid, policy of segregation and discrimination based on race, formerly in place in South Africa. Conquistador, conqueror used to describe Spanish explorers in the 16th century South America. Drought, extended period without rain or snow. Global warming, worldwide rise in temperatures due to human activity. Isthmus, narrow strip of land between 2 larger bodies of water. Keratin, key protein that makes up hair, horns, hooves, claws, feathers, and scales. Orator, one skilled at giving speeches. Plateau, elevated and relatively level area of land. Trafficking, the buying and selling of illegal goods. Campaign 2020, the Electoral College. You may think that voters are choosing the president in November, but that's only part of the story. The other part is the Electoral College. This is a group of people called electors who are chosen to represent each state. Here's how it works. The number of electors each state has equals the number of people that state has in Congress. Every state has 2 senators, but the number of representatives a state has is based on its population. States with higher populations have more representatives and also more electors. This map shows how many electors each state has. Whichever candidate wins the most votes in a state wins all of that state's electoral votes, except in Nebraska and Maine. In those states, electors can vote for candidates separately. There are 538 total electoral votes, and whichever candidate wins a majority of those wins the election. Under this system, a candidate can win the popular vote or votes from regular voters and still lose the election. This doesn't happen very often, but it did happen in the 2000 and 2016 elections. In 2000, George W. Bush got 500,000 fewer popular votes than his opponent, Al Gore. But Mr. Bush won 5 more electoral votes and won the election. The map here shows the final electoral results of the last presidential election in 2016, when Clinton won the popular vote by more than 3 million votes, but lost the electoral battle. Here you see the section of the Constitution that describes the Electoral College. The writers of the Constitution thought about having Congress choose the president, but decided it would give Congress too much power. They also thought about having people vote directly for the president, but decided that voters couldn't be trusted with making that decision without help. So the writers of the Constitution set up a system where people voted for local electors who they knew and trusted, and who had more knowledge about the candidates. These electors voted for the presidential candidates. Today, people have more than enough information to make up their own minds, but the same system is still in place. When people vote for president, they are really voting for the candidate's electors. Electors vote for the candidate who won the popular vote in their state. The political parties in each state select these electors who cast their votes in December. There is no law that they must vote the same way their state votes, but they almost always follow the people's choice. Each state then sends these votes to Congress, where they are officially counted on a state-by-state basis. Many people do not agree with the idea that a presidential candidate can win the popular vote but still lose the election in the Electoral College. But since the Electoral College is written into the Constitution, it would be very difficult to change it. In order for that to happen, Congress would have to propose and pass an amendment. The president would have to sign it, and 3/4 of the states would have to ratify or approve it. But a new movement proposes that states take matters into their own hands. In 2019, Oregon became the latest state to join the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, or the NPVIC. This compact or agreement has now been passed by 15 states and 1 territory, shown on the map here. In these places, electors will be instructed to cast their votes for the candidate that wins the national popular vote rather than whoever wins in their state. The NPVIC is supposed to go into effect once enough states have signed on to make up 270 electoral votes. This would be enough to make up a majority in the Electoral College.
Most people have heard of the Electoral College during presidential election years. But what exactly is the Electoral College? Simply said, it is a group of people appointed by each state who formally elect the President and Vice President of the United States. To understand how this process began and how it continues today, we can look at the Constitution of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. It specifies how many electors each state is entitled to have. Since 1964, there have been 538 electors in each presidential election. How did they decide on the number 538? Well, the number of electors is equal to the total voting membership of the United States Congress, 435 representatives plus 100 senators and 3 electors from the District of Columbia. Essentially, the Democratic candidate and Republican candidate are each trying to add up the electors in every state so that they surpass 270 electoral votes, or just over half of 538 votes, and win the presidency. So how do states even get electoral votes? Each state receives a particular number of electors based on population size. The census is conducted every 10 years, so every time the census happens, states might gain or lose a few electoral votes. Let's say you're a voter in California, a state with 55 electoral votes. If your candidate wins in California, they get all 55 of the state's electoral votes. If your candidate loses, they get none. This is why many presidential candidates want to win states like Texas, Florida, and New York. If you currently add up the electoral votes of those 3 states, you would have 96 electoral votes. Even if a candidate won North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and West Virginia, they would only gain 31 electoral votes total from those 8 states. Here's where it can get a little tricky. On a rare occasion, like in the year 2000, someone can win the popular vote but fail to gain 270 electoral votes. This means that the winner may have won and collected their electoral votes by small margins, winning just enough states with just enough electoral votes, but the losing candidate may have captured large voter margins in the remaining states. If this is the case, the very large margins secured by the losing candidate in the other states would add up to over 50% of the ballots cast nationally. Therefore, the losing candidate may have gained more than 50% of the ballots cast by voters, but failed to gain 270 of the electoral votes. Some critics of the Electoral College argue the system gives an unfair advantage to states with large numbers of electoral votes. Think of it this way. It is possible for a candidate to not get a single person's vote, not one vote, in 39 states or the District of Columbia, yet be elected president by winning the popular vote in just 11 of these 12 states: California, New York, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Georgia, or Virginia. This is why both parties pay attention to these states. However, others argue that the Electoral College protects small states such as Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and even geographically large states with small populations, like Alaska, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. That's because a candidate can't completely ignore small states, because in a close election, every electoral vote counts. There are certain states that have a long history of voting for a particular party. These are known as safe states. For the past 4 election cycles, in 1996, 2000, 2004, and 2008, Democrats could count on states like Oregon, Maryland, Michigan, and Massachusetts, whereas the Republicans could count on states like Mississippi, Alabama, Kansas, and Idaho. States that are teetering between parties are called swing states. In the past 4 election cycles, Ohio and Florida have been swing states, twice providing electoral votes for a Democratic candidate and twice providing electoral votes for a Republican candidate. Think about it. Do you live in a safe state? If so, is it a Democratic or Republican safe state? Do you live in a swing state? Are your neighboring states swing or safe? Is the population in your state increasing or decreasing? And do not forget, when you're watching the electoral returns on election night every 4 years and the big map of the United States is on the screen, know that the magic number is 270 and start adding.
Devastating wildfires in western U.S. Every year, many wildfires break out in the western part of the United States. This is part of the natural pattern going back for thousands of years. But these blazes have gotten worse in the last few decades, and this year has been no exception. As of September 14th, many wildfires were still burning out of control in several western states, which include California, Oregon, and Washington. California, the 3rd largest state by area in the U.S., has been especially hard hit. It has lost more than 3.4 million acres to the wildfires as of September 14th. This is equal to 3% of the state's total area. The SCU Lightning Complex fire has already become the largest blaze in the state's recorded history. It burned more than 600 square miles before being contained, and officials are worried about the strong Santa Ana winds that usually increase in September and October. California Governor Gavin Newsom stood in a burned-out forest and declared, "This is climate change. The debate is over." He said that the rest of America should see California as a warning sign about climate change. Oregon and Washington have also suffered great losses. Fires have consumed more than 1 million acres in Oregon, giving the city of Portland the worst air quality in the world. Firefighters and other emergency personnel have been working around the clock in all 3 states. The number of wildfires has decreased in the last few decades, but fires have become larger, hotter, and more destructive. Scientists say this is due to global warming, also known as climate change. The graph here shows how temperatures have climbed over the last 120 years. 8 of the warmest years ever recorded have taken place in the last 10 years. This year has also been incredibly hot. In early September, Woodland Hills, California recorded a high temperature of 121 degrees, a record for Los Angeles County. Nearly all climate scientists agree that global warming is due to human activities that cause air pollution. When these gases remain in the air, they trap heat in the atmosphere. This heat raises temperatures everywhere on Earth. Higher temperatures have caused a long drought or lack of rainfall in many western states. This drought has dried out many trees and other plants in California, making them more likely to act as fuel for fires. High temperatures can also lead to extreme weather events, such as thunderstorms. Lightning strikes are a major cause of wildfires. Witnesses in Oregon say they saw lightning hit dry trees and grasses before the fires began.
It's a disastrous new normal. Catastrophic fires, once contained to one season, now a harrowing year-round battle.
We gotta go.
A major factor, climate change.
There are tens of millions of people that are choking on climate change right now as a function of the smoke that these fires are producing.
In the last 40 years, fall temperatures in California have increased about 2 degrees, while precipitation has dropped about 30%. And with acres of overgrown forests, there's more fuel to burn, and it's not just in the countryside.
We've essentially built a nightmare into flammable landscapes made even worse by climate change.
Over 100 million homes now in what's called the wildland-urban interface, where neighborhoods and forests meet.
Instead of Smokey Bear in the middle of the woods, we need a Smokey Bear in the middle of suburbia.
We left 2 hours before the house burned down.
In 2017, the Tubbs fire tore through the city of Santa Rosa. Today, nearly 80% of the homes that were destroyed here have been or are being rebuilt. And while the community is coming back, the pain still lingers.
I have this just in my nightstand with what we need to take if we have to go.
Jennifer and Paul Rose rebuilt for a new climate.
Yeah, so there's about, I think, 5 or 6 feet between the house and the wooden fence.
New features now required for fireproofing, including more defensible space, non-combustible materials, and covered chimney outlets to prevent escaping embers. But the Rosés say they're still living in fear of losing it all again and are seriously considering moving away altogether, becoming climate refugees.
It makes us feel very trapped. It makes you feel like there's nowhere to go. Having to live like that is emotionally unsustainable.
If the fires are this bad now, what does it look like in 5 to 10 years?
Climate change is moving fast, and we need to move faster.
No! A harrowing forecast for our planet and a grave new world for families. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Santa Rosa, California.
Chicago changes park name to honor Frederick Douglass. The young people on the screen are students at the Village Leadership Academy in Chicago. In 2017, they began a petition to change the name of a local park. The park, located on Chicago's west side, was named after a U.S. senator from the 1800s named Stephen Douglas. Douglas represented Illinois in the Senate and is famous for his debates against Abraham Lincoln. Douglas believed in something called popular sovereignty, which meant each state could decide if slavery was illegal or not. He also owned a plantation where more than 100 enslaved people worked. Because of Douglas's attitudes towards slavery, the students at the Village Leadership Academy believed the park should change its name. They proposed changing the name to Douglas Park to honor the famous anti-slavery activist Frederick Douglass. The new name would also honor Douglass's wife, Anna, who was also an important voice in the anti-slavery movement. City officials didn't act on the students' petition for several years, but the students refused to give up. This year, George Floyd's death in Minnesota increased pressures on local governments to rename statues and buildings named after slave owners. In July, Chicago's Park District Board voted to move ahead with the renaming proposal. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in Maryland sometime around 1818. As a teenager, he was sent to a plantation where he was beaten. He and his girlfriend Anna came up with an escape plan. Douglass was able to escape and began a new life as a free man in New York. After that, a friend asked Frederick Douglass to speak to abolitionist or anti-slavery societies. Many people in the North were shocked that any former slave could speak so well, or even read. This is because in some states it was illegal to teach slaves how to read. Soon, Frederick's speaking abilities were in demand all over the U.S. In 1845, he published an autobiography titled Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. This book was very important to the abolitionist movement. The publication of his book made Frederick Douglass one of the most famous orators of his time. He also started to write and publish a newspaper called the North Star. Douglass had a huge influence on another famous American, Abraham Lincoln. Douglass went to the White House in 1863 to meet with the president. The two had a long conversation about race and slavery. Even though they did not see eye to eye on many issues, they shocked many people by becoming friends. The image on the left shows Douglass meeting with another president, Benjamin Harrison, in 1892.
A group of Chicago public school students are using their day off from school to educate adults about why they want to change the name of a park on the city's west side.
Yeah, it is a small change, they say, but it'll make a big difference. Megan Dwyer first reported on this issue last year, and now she's live at Douglass Park with an update. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Micah and Ben. These kids are not giving up. In fact, today they tell me they feel like they're getting the runaround from the Chicago Park District, but they're not going anywhere.
We acknowledge that the institution of slavery is wrong, unjust, a black spot in the history of this nation. Then he does not have to be commemorated. We do not have to commemorate people who participated in this institution.
For nearly 3 years, this group of middle schoolers from Village Leadership Academy has been on a mission: change the name of Stephen Douglas Park to Frederick Douglass Park.
Excuse me, sir, can you sign our petition to change the name from Stephen Douglas, a slaveholder, to Frederick Douglass, a freedom fighter?
In 2017, they first made their case to the Park District.
We decided that Frederick Douglass is a much better namesake for a park in a predominantly black neighborhood.
Many of the park signs have already been changed by a rogue activist, someone who sneakily added an extra S last year.
We want it to be permanent. We don't want it to wash off. Like, we want it to stay there like forever.
The kids don't know who did it.
Thank you. Great art skills.
But they do know they submitted a formal proposal to the Park District Board to change the park's name officially on December 4th.
I got 1, 2, 3.
They got thousands of supporting signatures and canvassed all over North Lawndale.
24, 25, 26.
But still, nothing has changed.
The official process is 45 days to wait on a decision. It's currently February, 17th, and we haven't heard anything back from the board yet.
To put pressure on the Park District, they held a teach-in today at the Douglass Park Cultural Center.
We want to be taken seriously as grassroots organizers, not just as cute kids who are well-spoken.
Making sure people who live in the neighborhood fully appreciate what they're trying to do, and saying loud and clear to the Chicago Park District Board of Commissioners, they are not going away.
They're learning a lot about the limitations of representative government, and they're learning a lot about how bureaucratic a lot of the people who are intended to represent us actually are. And even those people who share the same skin color as you oftentimes don't have your needs at heart.
We reached out to the Chicago Park District today. We did not hear back from them, likely because it is a holiday, but I looked through past board meeting agendas, and it does not appear that the Park District Commissioners have pushed this proposal forward at all. In fact, they have a meeting coming up on Wednesday. This is not on the agenda. We're live tonight at Douglass Park. Megan Dwyer, back to you guys.
China creates new protections for pangolins. This animal is a pangolin. It is a shy and unusual mammal that lives in the areas shown in green on the map. Pangolins aren't kept in many zoos, as the animals don't do well in captivity. According to experts, pangolins are the most heavily trafficked animal in the world. In this case, trafficking means the buying and selling of items, especially illegal or stolen goods. Humans capture these animals for two main reasons: food and supposed medicines. Pangolin meat is prized in China and Vietnam, and pangolin scales are used to make traditional medicines in Asia, although there is little evidence these medicines actually work. The price of pangolin scales has risen greatly in the last 5 years. For these reasons, more than 1 million wild pangolins have been killed in the last 10 years. Recently, there was some good news for pangolins. China has removed pangolin scales from its list of items approved for medical use. They have also increased protections on pangolins under their wildlife protection laws. This means that in China, pangolins are now as protected as panda bears. All trade and use of the animal in the country is now illegal. Pangolins are the only mammals covered in scales. These overlapping scales are made of a protein called keratin. This is the same protein that forms the scales on lizards, rhinoceroses' horns, and human hair and fingernails. Pangolin scales provide them with a built-in defense system. When threatened by predators, they roll into a ball, leaving no soft parts of their body exposed. However, while this may be a good defense against lions, who can't bite through their hard scales, it actually makes it easier for humans to capture them. Pangolins are nocturnal animals. Pangolins hunt for food at night and eat mainly ants, termites, and other insects. They catch insects with their long tongues. They also use their huge front claws to dig up underground insect nests. Pangolins can eat up to 70 million insects a year. Scientists once grouped pangolins together with anteaters. These two kinds of animals share similar body types, and both use their long sticky tongues to capture insects for food. But further research has shown that pangolins are actually more closely related to cats, dogs, and other meat-eating animals. The need to protect pangolins is even more urgent because these animals only mate once a year and usually have only one baby.
The world's most trafficked mammal is one you may have never even heard of: the pangolin. Despite its lizard-like appearance, the pangolin is indeed a mammal. Some pangolins are as small as a house cat, while others are as big as a medium-sized dog. Pangolins are covered in as many as 1,000 scales, which protect them from predators like big cats. When threatened, a pangolin's natural defense is to curl up into a ball. Unfortunately, there's one predator that pangolins aren't able to protect themselves against: humans. According to some estimates, poachers have hunted more than 1 million pangolins in the past decade. Poachers use trafficking routes that span the globe, frequently shifting routes to evade law enforcement. All 8 pangolin species, found only in tropical Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, are now at risk of extinction. Pangolins are killed for a variety of uses, from medicine to luxury goods, with the greatest demand in China and Vietnam. Pangolin scales, often powdered or made into a paste, are prescribed in traditional medicine for everything from relieving arthritis to stimulating lactation. However, these remedies have no scientific basis. In fact, pangolin scales are made of keratin, the same material found in fingernails. Pangolin fetuses, sometimes consumed in soup, are erroneously thought to enhance a man's virility. But only the wealthy can afford to eat pangolin, which is consumed in parts of Asia to demonstrate social status. In 2016, CITES, the International Treaty on Wildlife Trade, voted to ban all commercial trade in pangolins. However, these creatures continue to be poached at an alarming rate, even causing a devastating crash in Asian pangolin populations. Recently, poachers have increasingly turned to African species. The largest confiscation of pangolin scales occurred in 2017, which, according to one estimate, came from about 20,000 African pangolins. Making prospects worse for pangolin conservation, pangolins face habitat loss. Plus, they reproduce slowly, giving birth to only one baby a year. But why should we care about an animal most people have never heard of? Pangolin dealers are often part of the same worldwide criminal networks that drive other animals, such as elephants and rhinos, toward extinction. Plus, loss of pangolins could prove to be an ecological and economic disaster for local communities. Pangolins eat termites that might otherwise destroy crops and buildings. Pangolins also suffer abuses in the wildlife trade, such as force feeding and injuries from snares. A few lucky pangolins survive being trafficked. Confiscated pangolins in Vietnam, for example, may be sent to a rescue center and returned to the wild. There's a lot of work to be done to ensure the survival of pangolins. Countries must work to reduce demand and enforce laws against poaching. Otherwise, these gentle creatures may disappear before most people even know they exist.
Country of the Week, South Africa. South Africa is one of the largest countries in Africa, both in terms of area and population. It has 3 capital cities, Cape Town, Pretoria, and Bloemfontein, and each plays a different role in the government. Cape Town is the best known because it is where the laws are made. The biggest city is Johannesburg, which has a lot of large shopping malls and banks. The largest stock market in Africa is also located there. The northern part of the country is part of the Central Plateau. A plateau is a high, flat landform that rises above the area that surrounds it. The plateau ends suddenly in the Great Escarpment, which is a long cliff that runs across the middle of the country. One section of the escarpment is called God's Window. Much of South Africa is covered in grassland, which provides the habitat for many species of plants and animals. One of these is the springbok, which is the national animal of South Africa. The president of South Africa is Cyril Ramaphosa. He has been president since 2017. South Africa's economy is largely based on platinum exports. South Africa produces more platinum than any other country. Banking and manufacturing are important parts of the economy too. South Africa is one of the wealthiest countries in Africa, but it is also one of the most unequal countries in the world. More than 50% of the population lives in poverty. The majority of South Africans are black, but minority groups of Indian and white people make up large parts of the population. Before 1994, the white minority had made a system where they were at the top, black people were at the bottom, and Asian people were in between. Black people couldn't vote, and they were not allowed to work certain jobs or enter certain buildings. This system of segregation was known as apartheid. This system of segregation was similar to what the southern United States had with their Jim Crow laws. One famous South African, Nelson Mandela, was imprisoned for 27 years for his work to end apartheid. While he was in jail, Mandela became famous around the world, and there was an international campaign to get him out of prison. Mandela got out of prison in 1990. He received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. In 1994, when apartheid ended, South Africa held an election where the entire population was allowed to vote. Mandela was elected president. Before the Europeans came, there was a kingdom known as the Zulu Empire. Shaka Zulu ruled from 1816 to 1828. While some accused him of brutality, he strengthened the Zulu military so that it could fight against European invasions. Many well-known musicians and musical groups are from South Africa. One musician, Vusi Malasila, is known as the voice of South Africa because he is so popular. He sings folk music and protest music. More recently, a new musical style called Kwaito, which blends South African rhythms and melodies with hip-hop music, has become popular.
We're now about to explore the beautiful and love-filled country of South Africa. And yes, we finally added this country to our 10 Facts series, and I'm very excited to share 10 surprising and interesting facts about South Africa with you. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of FTD Facts. My name is Leroy Kenton, and now before I jump into the facts, I want to know, when you think about South Africa, what first comes to mind? You know, for me, right away I think of food, then I think of the music, and then the phrase motherland comes to mind, but that's just me. Let me hear from you. Alright guys, enough chit chat, let's just jump into the facts right now. So starting at number 10, when asking someone to name the capital of South Africa, you know, most people would be like, you know, it's obvious, Johannesburg, right? Although it is the largest and financially the most important city in South Africa, the answer is actually completely wrong. South Africa has 3 official capital cities. Pretoria, that's the administrative district, and then Bloemfontein, that's the judicial district, and then Cape Town is the legislative capital of South Africa. The country of South Africa is quite a multi-ethnic and multicultural country with one of the most diverse cultures and languages in the world. There are 11 officially recognized languages in the Constitution of South Africa, and those are English, Afrikaans, Indibili, Pedi, Sotho, Xhosa, Siswati, Sewonga, Setswana, and Zulu or isiZulu. Only one of those languages I know how to speak is English. So yeah, let me know down below how you think I did on that pronunciation. Anyways, the most spoken language is Zulu, followed by Xhosa, and those are also the 2 largest tribes in the country. However, English is considered to be the main language and is widely spoken throughout the country by most people. There's no other country in the world that has this much official languages, so South Africa definitely takes this one big time. South Africa is a treasure trove for archaeologists and paleontologists, as it has produced some of the world's oldest and most valuable fossils to this date. About 1/5 of the world's gold comes from the mines in South Africa, by the way. South Africa is the only country in the world to have 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners who have houses on the exact same street. The street in question is Vilakazi, and that's in Soweto in Johannesburg, and the Nobel Peace Prize winners were Nelson Mandela as well as Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Now, another interesting fact is that the first ever heart transplant was carried out in South Africa at the Groote Schuur Hospital in Cape Town. Now the surgeon Christian Bernard performed the operation in 1967. The operation was considered to be successful, even though the patient did sadly pass away 18 days later from double pneumonia, but his body had not rejected the heart. So where else in the world can you share a warm and sunny beach with a colony of penguins? Like seriously though, South Africa, there are various colonies of African penguins, also known as the jackass penguin. They can be found along the western coast of South Africa, and the most famous place to visit these birds is in Boulders Beach, and that's located south of Cape Town. With over 6 million trees, Johannesburg is considered to have the largest man-made forest in the entire world. Since the area of Johannesburg was originally a grassland, all of the trees were planted to provide wood for the growing mine industry in the 19th century. However, there have been many discussions on whether Johannesburg can officially claim this title, and if the trees in the city can be considered to be a forest or not. Urban myth or not, the city can definitely claim the title for being one of the most wooded cities in the entire world. To show you the importance of South Africa accounts for almost 25% of the GDP of the entire African continent, with an economy more than twice the size of the second biggest, which is in Algeria. But things are changing rapidly all across Africa. There's quite a bit of nations now that are really on the rise financially. Now, South Africa is also the first African country to host the FIFA World Cup, and that happened in 2010. Yeah, that was one of my favorite World Cups ever. On top of that, it's only the second country in the world to have hosted the cricket, rugby, Rugby Union, and Football World Cups after England. And the last thing I want to share about South Africa is the country is the first and up till today the only country to build nuclear weapons and then to voluntarily dismantle its nuclear weapons program. There's no other country in history that has done that. And that's a testament to the kind of people that South Africans are. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this journey into South Africa. This country is filled with some great stories and people, and although the country has seen some dark moments throughout its history, the people continue to press forward with a bright smile, and that's very inspiring to see.
This week in history. In the 1500s, Spanish explorers conquered much of Central and South America. The man you see here was one of these conquistadors. Vasco Núñez de Balboa was also the first European explorer to see the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Balboa was born in Spain somewhere around the year 1475. As a boy, he heard about Christopher Columbus and his journeys to the Americas. As soon as he could, he joined an expedition to the New World to seek his fortune. After exploring much of the northeast coast of South America, he ended up in Hispaniola with a large farm. When this farm failed, he and his dog Leoncico stowed away on a ship headed for the mainland of South America. When the captain found out, he threatened to kick Balboa off the ship, but the sailors on the ship spoke up for him, probably saving his life. When the ship landed, Balboa was one of 70 men who tried to settle in what is now the country of Colombia. He became a leader among these men as they searched for the right place. Many local native tribes fought against the Spaniards, trying to protect their own territory. When the group defeated these tribes, Balboa always tried to form an alliance with the tribal leader. They eventually founded a settlement they called Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien, the first permanent European settlement in the Americas. Balboa gained power in the New World, largely because he was good at getting other leaders removed from office. Although this made him a lot of enemies, Balboa ended up as the governor of the new Spanish province. Like many Spanish conquistadors, he used violence to force native people to search for gold. Eventually, Balboa and his men heard stories about a nearby kingdom filled with gold. This land was supposed to be located near a big sea. In September 1513, Balboa and his men marched west through the rainforest in search of this place. They traveled across the narrow strip of land that now forms the nation of Panama. A few weeks later, on September 25, 1513, Balboa climbed a hill and became the first European to see the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean. 4 days later, when his party reached the coast, Balboa proclaimed that the ocean and the land it touched belonged to Spain. For this reason, history books long said that Balboa discovered the Pacific. However, Balboa's luck soon ran out. Just a few years later, one of his Spanish enemies came back into power. This leader invited Balboa to visit his state and then accused him of trying to set up his own kingdom in South America. Balboa proclaimed his innocence, but he was found guilty. In January of 1519, he was beheaded. Vasco Núñez de Balboa is an interesting historical figure. He helped to prove that the New World fell between two oceans. Although his methods were brutal, he was not as bloodthirsty as many other conquistadors of the time. For this reason, he is still a national hero in the country of Panama, where the national currency is called the Balboa.
Vasco Núñez de Balboa grew up in Spain, and after Columbus's discovery of the New World, he followed suit and set off to explore the New World. He led an expedition that explored the coasts of both South and Central America. The expeditions were successful, but with limited men, Balboa was forced to return to Hispaniola, where he tried to become a farmer. He was not successful as a farmer and escaped to support a new settlement of San Sebastian, which was destroyed soon after he arrived. He went on to found Santa Maria and became its governor. Balboa soon organized an expedition to explore the coast of Panama. While there, he heard stories of a great ocean on the other side of the mountains. He set out with more than 100 Spaniards with 1,000 friendly natives to find the ocean. On September 25, 1513, his expedition reached the crest of the mountains and sighted the Pacific. It took the expedition 4 days to descend the mountains and reach the sea. Balboa immediately claimed the sea for Spain. He spent a few months exploring the Pacific coast before returning to Santa Maria, where he found himself replaced by a new governor. After spending 2 tumultuous years there, he set out once again to explore more of the west coast of South America. On his return, he was accused of treason and beheaded.
Now it's time for Faces and Places. 71-year-old Yoshihide Suga has been elected as the new Prime Minister of Japan following Shinzo Abe's recent resignation. Abe stepped down from the role due to a chronic health problem. Suga was elected as the leader of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party with 70% of the vote in Japan's parliament. After being elected, Suga announced his cabinet, which included many members who served under Abe as well. Suga previously served as Abe's chief cabinet secretary and was considered by many to be Abe's second-in-command. Suga takes over the position at a time when Japan is facing several major challenges. The country is still attempting to stop the spread of the coronavirus, which has negatively impacted its economy. Japan is also set to hold the Summer Olympics in 2021, but experts aren't sure if the virus will be under control by then. The new Prime Minister will face a general election in October of 2021.
Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga won a landslide victory in a ruling party leadership election on Monday, paving the way for him to replace Shinzo Abe as Prime Minister later this week. 71-year-old Suga has said he would continue Abe's signature Abenomics strategy of hyper-easy monetary policy, government spending and reforms, while juggling the problems of COVID-19 and a slumping economy, while confronting longer-term issues such as Japan's ageing population and low birth rate.
We must overcome this crisis so that each person in Japan can feel safe and have a stable life. In order to do that, we need to carry on Prime Minister Abe's measures and move forward with them. I believe it is my mission to do so.
Suga won 377 votes out of 534 votes cast and 535 possible votes in the Liberal Democratic Party election by the party's members of parliament and representatives of its 47 local chapters. It is virtually certain that he'll be elected Prime Minister in a parliamentary vote on Wednesday because of the LDP's majority in the lower house. He will serve out Abe's term as party leader through to September 2021. The son of a strawberry farmer from northern Japan, Suga was a loyal aide to outgoing Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who announced his resignation last month due to ill health.
American journalist Bob Woodward revealed previously unknown information about the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus in his new book titled Rage. Leading up to the book's release on September 15th, Woodward gave several interviews in which he said President Trump knew how deadly the coronavirus could be, but chose to downplay its seriousness publicly. Woodward taped many conversations with the president. In one March conversation, Trump told Woodward he wanted to, quote, play it down, unquote, referring to the coronavirus pandemic. In another conversation, Trump said the virus was airborne and very deadly, two statements he would publicly contradict later in the year. Some critics expressed concerns about why Woodward did not disclose this information sooner. Woodward is most famous for his reporting on the Watergate controversy that led to President Nixon's resignation.
Veteran journalist Bob Woodward offering a harsh critique of President Trump.
When there's a crisis, when the president particularly knows something, it's time to tell the public in some form. he failed.
That assessment based on 18 recorded interviews Woodward conducted with the president for his new book, Rage.
One of the things that President Trump told me in the presidency, there's always dynamite behind the door. The real dynamite, it's President Trump. He is the dynamite.
The president told Woodward he deliberately downplayed coronavirus dangers.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
A threat he privately warned about.
This is more deadly. This is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff.
But in public later that month, he was still downplaying the severity and spread of the virus.
This is a flu. This is like a flu.
Critics say promoting fear has long been President Trump's calling card on the campaign trail.
Don't let them ruin the suburbs.
But the president tells Woodward he intentionally misled the American public about coronavirus dangers because he didn't want to spark a panic.
Keep calm and carry on. That's what I did. They wanted me to come out and scream, people are dying, we're dying. No, we did it just the right way.
By the time of their final interviews in August, the U.S. would have the most coronavirus infections and deaths in the world.
Nothing more could have been done. Nothing more could have been done.
President Trump on defense, dismissing the book and its author for not coming forward earlier.
If Bob Woodward thought it was bad, then he should have immediately gone out publicly, not wait 4 months.
Now, Democrats have seized on the revelations in Bob Woodward's book to make their case against President Trump's leadership during the pandemic. Joe Biden says the audio tapes show President Trump failed to do his job on purpose, Biden calling it a life and death betrayal of the American people.
In Nevada, President Trump held a campaign rally recently in Henderson, Nevada, despite a state mandate limiting indoor gatherings to 50 people. The rally took place inside a manufacturing plant where many attendees did not wear masks and social distancing was not enforced. At least one top advisor in the Trump administration criticized the indoor rally but chose to stay anonymous. Other Trump campaign officials supported holding the rally and claimed the event was protected by the First Amendment. The Democratic governor of Nevada released a statement condemning the president's decision to hold an indoor rally. Experts have warned that large indoor rallies could serve as super spreader events. As of the day of the rally, there had been over 1,400 deaths related to the coronavirus in Nevada. Recently, the Kingdom of Bahrain, an island nation in the Persian Gulf, became the fourth Arab country to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. Bahrain's decision comes only a month after the United Arab Emirates decided to normalize relations with Israel as well. Leaders from both countries met with President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on September 15 to sign agreements to normalize relations. While President Trump claimed the agreement signaled a new era of peace in the region, critics believe the agreement has more to do with business interests than conflict resolution. Palestinian leaders condemned the agreement, with one organization saying the only way for peace in the region would require, quote, the end of Israel's occupation, unquote. A group of Palestinian protesters took to the streets in Gaza to protest the two Arab countries normalizing ties with Israel. And now it's time for Where in the World. Wildfires gave this state the worst air quality in the world, number 5. That would be the state of Oregon. This state's largest city is renaming a park for Frederick Douglass, number 1. That would be Illinois. This nation is taking steps to protect pangolins, number 6. That would be China. In the early 1990s, this country abolished its racist policy of apartheid, number 3. That would be South Africa. Balboa discovered the Pacific Ocean from a hill in this nation, number 2. That would be Panama. And finally, Gavin Newsom is the governor of this state number 4. That would be California. And now it's time for Remember When. British actress Diana Rigg has passed away at the age of 82. In 1965, Diana Rigg became an international superstar in the British television show The Avengers. As high-kicking agent Emma Peel, Rigg was one of the first female action stars. But her career didn't begin with The Avengers, and it didn't end there either. Diana Rigg had one of the longest and most impressive careers of her generation. And when she passed away on September 10th, she was also remembered as a free spirit who always stood up for herself and did whatever she wanted to do. She was born in Doncaster, England, with the rather grand name of Enid Diana Elizabeth Rigg. She lived in Doncaster for exactly 2 months before the family moved to India for 8 years so her father could work as a railroad executive. There, Diana grew up speaking both English and Hindi. After World War II, she was sent back to England where she attended a boarding school. She hated the school, but a teacher there noticed that she had a beautiful speaking voice and encouraged her to try acting. After graduating, Rigg was accepted to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. She made her professional debut at the age of 19 before joining the Royal Shakespeare Company. Soon, people were talking about her performances in plays such as King Lear. In another play, The Comedy of Errors, she starred alongside another young British actress named Helen Mirren. In 1965, Rigg auditioned for a TV show called The Avengers. This series, hugely popular in the UK, had just become the first BBC show picked up for distribution in the United States. The producers noted the chemistry between Rigg and actor Patrick Macnee and cast her immediately as Emma Peel. Emma Peel was as quick with karate chops as she was with one-liners. She also had a tendency to wear skin-tight leather catsuits, although they usually were made of fake leather so they wouldn't split during action scenes. The Avengers became a massive success in the United States as well as the UK. Rigg was somewhat uncomfortable with becoming an overnight sex symbol. She also worried that her theatrical training was being wasted on trading wisecracks on TV. But what really soured Rigg on The Avengers was finding out that she was paid less than almost anyone else in the show, even the camera operators. After her second season on the show, she held out for more money. When no one spoke up for her, she walked away from the role of Emma Peel forever. Diana Rigg did not lose her career by leaving The Avengers. She played James Bond's wife on film and many difficult roles on stage. She even tried starring in an American TV sitcom in the 1970s. In 1982, she appeared in the movie version of Evil Under the Sun, as you see here. She was the host of the mystery PBS series for 14 years. In 1993, she won the Tony Award for Best Actress for her lead role in the ancient Greek play Medea. The next year, she gained the title of Dame Diana Rigg from Queen Elizabeth II. In typical fashion, she had a wisecrack ready about this honor. Quote, "I hope there's a tinge of disgrace about me. Hopefully there's one good scandal left in me yet," unquote. In her late 70s, Diana Rigg once again became a part of TV history. She played the scheming Olenna Tyrell in the hit HBO series Game of Thrones for several seasons. When asked how she felt playing one of the series' most dangerous characters, Rigg remarked, quote, "I'm pretty good at evil," unquote.
It was the role which catapulted Diana Rigg to fame. As the sexy, sassy Emma Peel, an equal to Patrick Macnee's Steed.
Good morning, Mrs. Peel.
Good morning, Steed. The door's open.
She was as much an icon of the swinging 1960s as the Beatles or the Mini.
Social visit?
She married George Lazenby's 007.
You know, I haven't given you a wedding present yet.
I had an idea about that. 3 girls, 3 boys.
Although she was shot dead, she was the only actor to ever take the title Mrs. Bond.
Darling, now we have
Today, George Lazenby posted this picture of them together. I'm so sad to hear of the death of Diana Rigg. As my new bride, Tracy Bond, I wept for her loss. Now, upon hearing of Dame Diana's death, I weep again. Equally at ease in classical roles, here opposite Laurence Olivier in Shakespeare's King Lear, Diana Rigg showed her great versatility as a performer.
I am made of that self-metal as my sister. Firing mechanism, Doctor. Mr. Sweet and I were too smart for you after all.
Just let your daughter go, Mrs. Gilliflower.
In this episode of Doctor Who, she and her daughter Rachel, who followed in her mother's footsteps, acted together.
It is of no matter, for you killed me a long time ago.
Today, Rachel revealed her mother had been diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. But she added that she spent her last months joyfully reflecting on her extraordinary life. To a younger generation, she will be best remembered as Lady Olenna Tyrell in Game of Thrones, a matriarch with an acerbic aside or a wise word.
I was good. I was very, very good.
Channeling a don't give a damn spirit, Dame Diana was still hard at work in her 80s.
The doctor said I must drink more water.
Mrs. Pumphrey.
Despite her death, she'll still be seen in All Creatures Great and Small. But despite more than half a century on stage and screen, to many she will forever be the iconic action girl with the husky voice and captivating smile.
And that's it for this edition of NewsCurrents. Join us again next week for another new edition of NewsCurrents. This is ECTV.